Most people spend their energy fighting to be noticed. They try to stay visible, stay accessible, and believe that the more they appear, the more they'll matter. But those who truly understand power don't fight for attention. They fight for mental real estate. Because attention is fleeting, mental space is dominance. When someone commands your time, that's influence. But when someone commands your thoughts, when you replay their words, when you question what they meant, when their presence lingers long after they've gone, that's real power. You don't need to chase being seen. You need to occupy the mind. And that is an entirely different game. Most people assume obsession is born from intensity. They think that pouring in more energy, more emotion, more effort will make people become attached. But obsession doesn't come from intensity. It comes from psychological tension. The human mind isn't governed by what is clear and obvious. It is governed by what feels unresolved. When everything is explained, the brain settles down. When everything is predictable, interest quietly dies. But when something feels incomplete, when there is curiosity, when there is uncertainty, when something goes left unsaid, the mind keeps circling back again and again. This is why the most powerful people aren't the loudest in the room. They are the most mentally present. Machiavellian thinking isn't about romance. It isn't about playing emotional games. It's about leverage. It's about understanding how attention operates, how memory functions, and how psychological tension keeps someone mentally tethered to you. As Niccolo Machiavelli grasped centuries ago, power is not about forcing people to feel something. Power is about constructing conditions where their own mind keeps returning to you on its own. Because the most potent form of influence isn't control over someone's actions. It's influence over their inner world. When your presence generates unresolved curiosity, when your behavior resists full prediction, when your absence creates mental friction, you become psychologically significant. And people don't pursue what is readily available. They pursue what occupies their thoughts. Today, we're breaking down 7 modern dark psychology principles that transform simple presence into lasting mental permanence. These principles won't teach you how to chase attention. They'll teach you how to create psychological gravity, how to become unforgettable, how to become mentally valuable, how to become someone the mind keeps returning to without effort, without pressure, without need. Real power is being mentally inescapable. Before we begin, drop this affirmation in the comments. I control mental space. Most people believe influence is built by being around someone as often as possible. They stay available, they reply instantly. They stretch conversations. They try to keep the interaction alive for as long as they can. But constant presence doesn't create value. It creates familiarity. And familiarity puts the mind at ease. When someone sees you too often, hears from you too regularly, or feels your energy all the time, your presence becomes ordinary, predictable, effortless to process. And the human brain doesn't hold on to what feels routine. Strategic influence operates differently. The objective isn't to be around longer. The objective is to stay in their mind after you're gone. Because power isn't measured by how long you were present. Power is measured by how long your impact persists. This is where most people go wrong. They prioritize duration over depth. They talk too much, they over-explain. They fill every silence. And in doing so, they eliminate the very thing that creates mental engagement, space. The mind needs room to replay. When an interaction is brief but meaningful, something fascinating happens. The brain begins reconstructing the moment. It reviews your words. It examines your tone. It attempts to decode the intention behind what you said. And that process creates repetition. Repetition breeds familiarity. But when that repetition happens inside their own mind, it transforms into fixation. Instead of giving people more of your time, give them something to think about. Say less, but make it count. Speak with precision, not volume. End conversations while the energy is still climbing, not when it begins to drop. Because the most powerful psychological hook is an unfinished emotional state. When the interaction closes too cleanly, the brain moves on. But when it ends with curiosity, interest, or a subtle sense of incompletion, the mind continues the interaction on its own. That is how mental space is created. Another key principle is the emotional imprint. People don't remember lengthy conversations. They remember emotional shifts, an unexpected moment of insight, a sharp observation, a composed reaction when emotion was anticipated. When your presence triggers a noticeable internal response, the brain marks that interaction as significant. And significance leads to recall. But recall only becomes obsession when paired with absence. If you remain constantly available, the mind has no reason to return to you. But when you create impact and then step away, the brain has no fresh input, so it recycles the old one. That's when your mental presence expands. Silence after impact is not distance. It's psychological amplification. Another mistake people make is trying to sustain momentum through constant contact. They believe continuity builds connection. In reality, constant contact dissolves mystery, and mystery is the fuel of mental engagement. When someone isn't sure exactly when they'll hear from you again, when your presence feels deliberate rather than automatic, your appearances carry weight. You shift from routine to event, from expected to noticed. And once your presence is noticed, your absence becomes felt. That is the transition from physical interaction to psychological occupation. The most influential people aren't those who are always around. They are the ones whose brief presence leaves a lasting cognitive trace. Short interaction, deep impact. Then space. Because when the conversation ends and their mind keeps replaying it, you are no longer just interacting with them. You are living inside their thoughts. Drop this affirmation in the comments. My impact lingers. Number 2, be hard to categorize. The human mind is wired for efficiency. It constantly scans people and situations, searching for patterns. The moment it believes it has someone figured out, it generates a mental label: friendly, serious, emotional, logical, confident, quiet, predictable. And once that label is applied, something critical happens. Attention falls away because the brain believes there's nothing new left to find. This is why most people become forgettable. Their reactions are consistent, their tone never shifts. Their behavior adheres to a clear pattern. After a short while, others feel they know exactly who they are and what to expect. And when someone becomes predictable, the mind stops working. But obsession doesn't grow from certainty, it grows from complexity. When someone can't fully define you, their brain keeps trying. It searches for hidden meaning, it dissects your behavior. It pays sharper attention to your words, your mood, your reactions, because the mind is unsettled by incomplete understanding. It craves closure, and if you never offer full closure, the attention continues. Most people make themselves easy to read. Their emotions are transparent, their opinions are immediate, their reactions are automatic. They reveal everything too quickly in an effort to build connection. But full transparency eliminates intrigue. When someone feels they've seen all your layers, curiosity vanishes. Strategic presence works differently. Instead of exposing your full emotional range at once, you allow different dimensions of your personality to surface at different moments. Calm in one situation, sharp in another. Light humor when seriousness is expected. Silence when others are reacting emotionally. This contrast produces cognitive tension. The mind begins forming quiet questions. Are they emotional or controlled? Warm or distant, relaxed or intense? The harder it becomes to place you in a single category, the more mental energy you command. But this isn't about performance or pretense. It's about emotional control and selective expression. Most people react automatically based on circumstances. Strategically minded individuals respond with intention. They choose when to display intensity, when to show restraint, when to engage, when to pull back. This deliberate variation prevents pattern formation. And without a stable pattern, the brain remains alert. Emotional independence is another vital factor. When your reactions aren't steered by approval, pressure, or social expectation, your behavior becomes less predictable. You aren't easily swayed by the emotional climate around you. While others rise and fall with their environment, you remain grounded. That stability, combined with selective variation, creates a striking psychological effect. You feel centered but not simple, clear but not fully decoded. And that balance holds attention. People often believe likability comes from being easy to understand. But memorability comes from depth. When someone senses there's more beneath your surface than what's visible, their mind keeps reaching for the missing pieces. Every interaction becomes a quiet investigation. Every conversation a new data point. And over time, that subtle analysis turns into mental investment. They're no longer just talking to you. They're trying to understand you. And when someone is trying to understand you, you already occupy their thoughts. Because the rarest psychological position isn't being liked. It's being genuinely interesting without effort. The human brain is relentlessly trying to close loops. It wants clarity, it wants emotional certainty. It wants to know where things stand, what something means, and what comes next. When everything feels settled, the mind relaxes. And when the mind relaxes, attention fades. This is why certainty feels comfortable, but rarely produces psychological intensity. When someone knows exactly how you feel, exactly how you'll respond, and exactly where they stand in your world, there's nothing left for their mind to engage with. The emotional equation is complete. There's nothing left to solve. But when there's controlled uncertainty, something entirely different happens. The mind stays active. It replays conversations, hunting for hidden signals. It analyzes tone, timing, and behavior. It tries to map your emotional position. It searches for confirmation that never fully arrives, and that search creates mental attachment. This doesn't mean confusion or erratic mixed signals. That creates distrust and distance. Controlled uncertainty is something else entirely. It emerges from emotional steadiness paired with selective clarity. Your energy is consistent, your behavior is composed, but your emotional availability remains undefined. Sometimes you're warm, other times reserved. Sometimes you engage deeply, other times you withdraw without explanation. Your attention feels chosen, not automatic. This creates an open loop. The person can't fully gauge your emotional investment. They sense interest but not certainty. They feel connection but not possession. And that space between connection and certainty is precisely where obsession takes root. Timing is another powerful element of controlled uncertainty. Most people respond to everything immediately. Messages, invitations, emotional signals. Their availability becomes predictable. Their attention feels guaranteed. But when your responses follow your own internal rhythm instead of emotional pressure, your presence feels chosen rather than simply given. The mind takes note. It begins to wonder what else holds your focus. It begins to assign more value to the moments you do engage, because availability that isn't constant feels precious. Consistency and character combined with variability and access generates psychological tension. And that tension keeps attention alive. Language plays a role as well. People frequently over-explain their feelings, intentions, and thoughts because they fear being misread. But too much explanation strips away mystery. When every emotion is defined and every intention is stated out loud, there's no room left for interpretation. And interpretation is what keeps the mind active. Strategic communication is clear but not exhaustive. You share enough to form a connection, but not so much that nothing remains to wonder about. The goal isn't to create doubt about your character. The goal is to leave space around your emotional depth. When someone senses there's more beneath the surface than you've revealed, their attention naturally gravitates toward you. Because uncertainty sparks curiosity, and curiosity sparks mental repetition. One final factor gives controlled uncertainty its strength: emotional independence. When your mood, your attention, and your engagement aren't driven by someone else's reactions, your emotional position feels self-contained. You aren't reshaping yourself to preserve their comfort. You're operating from your own internal center. That independence signals strength, and strength paired with emotional space creates a formidable psychological pull. They can't fully predict you. They can't fully measure you. And the mind keeps trying. because the most persistent form of attention is born from unanswered emotional questions. Number 4, associate yourself with elevation. The human mind is naturally oriented toward growth. People are perpetually searching for environments, relationships, and influences that make them feel sharper, stronger, and more capable. They may not voice it openly, but at a psychological level, everyone is silently asking the same question. Does my life feel better when this person is around? If the answer is yes, attachment begins. If your presence leaves someone feeling more focused, more confident, more disciplined, or more driven, you become more than just another connection. You become psychologically valuable, and value creates mental priority. Most people attempt to build attachment through comfort alone. They focus on being supportive, agreeable, and low effort to be around. And while comfort builds familiarity, it doesn't always generate deep psychological impact. Comfort soothes the mind, elevation activates it. When someone walks away from an interaction with you feeling more motivated, more self-aware, or more mentally energized, their brain begins associating you with progress. And the mind holds tightly to anything linked to personal growth. This is because expansion triggers the brain's reward system. When people sense they're becoming better versions of themselves, they naturally return to the source of that sensation. Your role isn't to entertain them. Your role is to elevate their inner state. This happens through the way you think, the way you communicate, and the standards you embody. When your conversations bring focus instead of noise, when your perspective challenges others to think more deeply rather than coast on comfort, your presence begins to stand apart. You're no longer just an interaction. You become an influence. Emotional atmosphere matters too. When your energy is grounded, calm, and forward-facing, people begin to regulate themselves around you. Your presence becomes stabilizing in a world full of distraction and emotional turbulence. Stability itself carries power. When someone feels more centered after spending time with you, your psychological weight increases. But elevation isn't created through advice or correction alone. Most people resist being told what to do. True elevation is communicated through example. When your lifestyle reflects discipline, purpose, and direction, others feel the contrast without you uttering a word. Your habits signal your standards. Your focus signals your priorities. And that unspoken message builds respect. Respect is more durable than attraction, because respect creates long-term mental positioning. Selective reinforcement is another powerful element. When you recognize genuine strength, effort, or progress in someone, rather than just offering casual praise, your approval carries meaning. You're not handing out validation freely. You're acknowledging real growth. And when your recognition feels earned rather than reflexive, your words carry weight. People begin to value your perspective. And once someone values your perspective, they start thinking about how they appear in your eyes, even when you're not present. That is psychological elevation converting into mental presence. There's also a contrast effect at work. If your environment, your conversations, and your mindset are consistently oriented toward improvement, other environments may start to feel flat by comparison. Your presence becomes synonymous with momentum, and momentum is addictive. People naturally gravitate back toward people and places that make them feel like they're moving forward, rather than standing still. This is how elevation creates attachment without force. You're not requesting attention. Your presence earns it, because the mind prioritizes what advances its future. Number 5, master emotional contrast. The human brain is designed to detect change. It doesn't hold on to what remains static for long. When emotions, tone, and behavior stay constant, the mind adapts quickly. What once felt engaging becomes ordinary. What once felt special becomes expected. And what becomes expected gradually loses its emotional resonance. This is why relentless warmth, relentless seriousness, or relentless intensity eventually diminishes in effect. Even positive energy, when delivered without variation, becomes background noise. But contrast resets attention. Contrast produces emotional movement. And emotional movement is what the brain encodes and remembers. Most people operate in a single emotional register, always serious, always playful, always agreeable, or always intense. Their responses follow the same rhythm regardless of the situation. Because the pattern is stable, others stop paying close attention. They already know what's coming. But when your emotional range is controlled and dynamic, something shifts. The mind stays alert. If you're composed and focused most of the time, a flash of sharp humor hits differently. If you're disciplined and direct, a rare moment of warmth feels meaningful. If you typically speak with restraint, a brief burst of intensity commands attention. The brain encodes these departures from expectation because they break the pattern, and what breaks the pattern becomes memorable. Emotional contrast is not about mood swings or impulse-driven unpredictability. It is about deliberate variation. Your core presence stays stable, but your expression shifts with intention. You know when to be light. You know when to be serious. You know when to pull back. You know when to be fully present. This range creates depth. People experience different emotional dimensions around you. One moment feels purposeful and precise. Another feels relaxed and human. That variation makes your presence feel alive rather than flat. Flat personalities are easy to process. Layered emotional experiences linger in memory. Contrast also works because it produces emotional spikes. The brain retains peaks and transitions more readily than steady states. A brief moment of unexpected encouragement, a sudden insightful remark, a calm and composed response during tension. These create stronger impressions than extended stretches of neutral interaction. These moments become internal reference points. Later, the mind returns to them. It replays the tone, the expression, the timing. And through that replay, your psychological presence deepens. Contrast also amplifies perceived authenticity.